How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Grail or Garbage. I'm Rollshambo, the connoisseur and collector of all things sharp and shiny, and on today's episode, I'm going to categorically break it down for you on this Orion Knives Scorpio. You see, I've been carrying this knife for the last 2 weeks, answering the tough questions, and now that I have, the only question left to answer is it a grail or is it garbage? Alrighty, everybody, so before we go into answering the question, is it a grail or is it garbage, I want to go ahead and give some information to the uninitiated, if you will. On the screen right now, I'm going to pop up our current list, our current leaderboard, if you will, and you're going to notice a few things. First thing you're going to notice is that we go off of 5 categories. The 5 categories that matter are materials, ergonomics, fidget factor, the lock, and of course fit and finish. Each category could be worth a max of 10 points, 1 being garbage, 10 being amazing. And then we're going to add them all up at the end and give it a total score. So any score between 0 to 10 is garbage. Deny its existence. Shun it in the streets. It's not worth your time. 11 to 20 is nothing special. Anything in that range is going to be something that you pick up because you absolutely have to have a knife. Maybe you're on a camping trip and you scornfully forgot your knife at home, but you have to have something, and pick it up at Ace Hardware. 21 to 30 is going to be a low recommend, and that's going to be knives that might be recommendable to some, but I can't necessarily recommend it to everyone. So don't prioritize it, but maybe if it's specifically best for you, go for it. 31 to 40 is a high recommend. Those are going to be knives that I can recommend to anybody, and at the end of the day, I can feel good knowing that if someone buys that knife, they're going to feel good about it. 41 to 50, of course, is grail status. Now, you'll notice that currently our highest scoring knives are the Spyderco Para 3 and the Spyderco Smock, both at 39. They're not quite grails, but they're definitely the highest that we've scored so far. Guys, I've been carrying this Orion Knives Scorpio for the last 2 weeks. And I know what you're thinking, no you haven't, you picked up other knives. Well listen, I carry multiple knives very frequently, and so this has been one that I've carried at least every day, if not every other day, and I can tell you that it's an amazing knife. When I do my is it grail or garbage episode, I want to be able to give you the facts, and here's the facts about this knife. It's not very big. It's actually, you know, on the smaller end. Let's do some size comparisons real quick. We'll go up against the Spyderco Para 3. And then up against the Spyderco Smock. 2 other knives that I carry religiously. As you can see, its blade profile is closer to the Para 3, a little bit wider than the Smock. Definitely shorter than both, and it's the smallest of the 3. Even though it does have a wider blade profile, it's not going to be anywhere near that of the Para 3. So if the Para 3 fits in your pocket just fine, this one will as well. Since we're comparing it to the Para 3, let's go ahead and check out thickness. It is quite a bit thicker than the Para 3. I'll say this, it's not something that I noticed when I was carrying it. Except for the fact that the thicker handle scales actually make it easier to grip in the hands. It's quite comfortable, and it's also the only knife that I know of that's so purposely designed. Check out these chamfered scales at the top here where they have the place for your thumb, and specifically the jimping near the tip. So I can get the most controlled grip I've ever seen on any knife. If you're doing draw cuts or anything that requires fine precision and control, nothing's going to beat this. And yes, the handle scales are on the thicker side, but that's not a bad thing because it gives you more purchase. Now, you might also be saying, but it's shorter, I like bigger knives, is this going to work for me? And the good news is that I wear size large gloves, and check this out, full 4-finger grip. It's funny to me because a lot of people like me, they don't like small knives because they don't like the full 3-finger grip garbage. They want to be able to put their hand on the knife and get a full purchase. And the good news is that despite the fact that the blade itself is on the shorter side of like believe it's 2.75, 2.85 inches, you can still get a full grip on these handle scales. So yeah, it's smaller, but it doesn't hinder you from being able to get full purchase. Now, could you put this in a reverse grip? Sure, it's not what I would recommend specifically for this knife, but you could do it. It's not the most comfortable thing, but you can also tell that it's not what it was meant for. This was meant to be a knife that was to be used, to be carried every day. When they say everyday carry knife, any knife can do that, but this seems like it was purpose built for that reason. If you didn't know, the Orion Knives Scorpio was designed by David, also known as Blade Banter on YouTube, and he is a knife enthusiast first and foremost. So you're going to notice that because you get things like backspacer, you get flipper tab, button lock, a single-sided pivot, which I love, and you also get multi-row bearings, thumb studs on both sides, and crowning on the spine. The spine is crowned. Like, you know, there's so many knives out there that are so good, but they miss the details like that. The liners are shadow boxed, of course, and you get the same kind of detent that you would expect out of any button lock, really, which is to say it's not a tough detent. Instead of judging the detent on a button lock, because that plunge is really what defines the detent, I like to rather judge it based on the button itself. And the button works really, really good. When it's fully out there, there is absolutely no blade play. And then when you pop the button in, there's no button stick and it drops shut. So, you know, you can do this motion all you want, and you'll notice it's not rebounding out of there. It's quite nice. The thumb studs do work, and the flipper tab does work. One thing that I'll tell you about this flipper tab is that you can pretty much only light switch it. It's not really designed to be a push button. I mean, you could try, but you're just going to get this. It's upswept. So that does help in your pocket because it's not sticking out a whole lot, but it's not really meant for push button. I mean, of course, I did it just there, but you know, it's really, really shines when you light switch it. You can middle finger flick it as well. Something that I was rather disappointed in, and this is one of the few things I'm not a huge fan of, is this full length fuller is not super wide. And I'll show you what I mean. Here is my Grant gripper, albeit this is a, you know, $300+ knife, but that fuller is thick enough to get your thumb in there. And you know, I thought about it. I was like, well, I mean, did he have the opportunity to make it thicker? And yeah, you could have gotten a thicker fuller in there, and that would have made this, you know, even better. It's not like that's a deal killer by any stretch. It's definitely not. I still love this knife, and it wouldn't keep me from buying it even if it had no fuller at all. In fact, that might be a pretty cool look to it. It's just something that if you're going to do it, I suggest making that fuller a little bit wider. And for those of you that get one of these that agree with me, I'm sure that you could find a way to Dremel that out and do your own modifications at your own risk. But that's just something that I would like to see. If there's a second version on the way, the two biggest things that I want in the second version of this knife, if one is ever made, is aluminum handle scales or titanium handle scales and a wider fuller so that you can get a full finger in there. Because right now, it's really not ideal unless you've got, you know, those fingernail talons that you can dig into the edge there. Otherwise, that's it. Guys, I love this knife. Let's go ahead and get into the scoring. The very first category, as already mentioned, is materials. For the materials, you get 14 C28N shadowbox steel liners with a nicely done micarta handle scale. The pocket clip is a milled titanium pocket clip, and the backspacer itself is made out of G10, running all on a multi-row bearing system. All in all, those materials are great, especially when you consider the value proposition of this being under $100. At the time that I bought it, it was $85, and for $85, you get a lot of nice things out of this one. As far as the materials are concerned, it's good enough to score a 6 out of 10. 6 out of 10 lands the materials in the okay category, which is to say they're not amazing, but they're average, and they are average materials. So 6 out of 10 for materials is where we're going to land. If we could get these handle scales upgraded to aluminum, or God forbid titanium, it would have landed it in the 7, possibly 8 category. The blade steel I'm perfectly okay with. I love 14C28N. It's good there. 6 out of 10 is a respectable score for this knife at under 85 bucks. Next up, we've got possibly the highest scoring category for this knife, and that is the ergonomics. The Orion Knives Solaris, which is the bigger brother to this one, didn't have micarta scale. It had G10. Now G10 is a fine material, but it doesn't necessarily give you that primo feel. It's really nice as far as durability and usability are concerned, but it doesn't really give you that feel. This one comes with micarta. One of the things I love about micarta is its ability to naturally patina over time. Just think about when you put wear and tear on your jeans, you know, how that can be, you know, different based on each set of jeans. Same thing with micarta. Micarta will patina naturally over time, and on top of that, the feel just feels really friendly in the hand, especially since these handle scales are so thick. Now, the thick handle scales do not make me dislike this at all. In fact, I'm really grateful that the handle scales are so thick. It actually makes the micarta feel nice and plush in the hand. So even if you're bearing down on this, because the handle scales are a nice micarta, it's not going to rub you the wrong way. The shape of the handle itself does mean that this flipper tab is indicating where you will put your finger. On the Solaris, you might be able to get away with putting your finger behind it. On this one, you definitely have to follow the rules. Now, I don't like being told where to put my hands on my knife, but it is the right spot to put it, and regardless of whether the flipper tab was there or not, that's still where I would be putting my hands. So I'm actually okay with that. Furthermore, when we're talking about ergonomics, what makes this so special is that this is the only knife that I've ever seen that has done these they're not really cutouts, but like this chamfering near the stock of the blade, and that allows you to get the most controlled grip I've ever seen on any EDC knife. You put your thumb there, middle finger there, finger on top of the spine, and you can just get the best control out of it. And it's a comfortable grip too. Like, it's natural and it's intuitive, and because you can feel comfortable in that grip, it allows you to have more than just your regular grip on this knife. And you know, you can tell that this was purpose built and it was a well thought out design, and it feels comfortable both ways. You can do a regular pinch grip on this too, like this, and it works. You can do this and it works. You can do this and it works. And there's no sharp spots. Look at the crowning on that spine. That means that, you know, when you go to put your fingers on it, it just feels nice and comfortable. And if you run your finger across the back, it's not going to hurt you. Even the jimping is really well knocked down and still maintains a good grip. The ergonomics on this knife are quite simply impressive, and the amount of thought that went into it is enough to give this knife a 9 out of 10 for ergonomics. Absolutely phenomenal. Next up, we've got the Fidget Factor. How much do you want to play with it? If you're not taking it out of your pocket and playing with it, what are you doing, man? I mean, that's how we all get to know our knives. It's how we all become super comfortable with them. And it's not even necessarily about how many options you have for deployment or how smoothly it goes back in. It's about how much does this knife make you want to play with it. And well, because of the small size, it actually makes it quite easy to play with and also quite desirable, even though my camera stand is in front of me right now, so it makes it hard for me to really get the most out of this. I can tell you that this is definitely fun to play with. It's not anything that's super amazing, but it is a knife that, you know, when I have a group of knives on the table, it's one that I will gravitate towards. Also, because that fuller is not, I'll tell you what, right now, it would have gotten a higher score had that fuller been a little bit wider. A little bit wider of a fuller on this knife, and I'm telling you, this would have scored a few more points. As it stands, in combination with this button lock, which doesn't have any stick, in combination with the fact that the handle scales feel comfortable in the hands, the ergonomics of this knife actually allow you to fidget with it a lot. The flipper tab is quick and responsive, and the thumb stud works well as well. Being able to handle this knife, it's very well balanced, and I can tell you that makes it fun to play with as well. Having these materials, these ergonomics, the deployment option of a button lock, I mean, I could mindlessly do this all day. You know, switch over to the thumb studs, middle reverse flick. It's fun to play with, and it does make me want to pick it up and play with it. The only thing that made it lose points was the fact that that fuller, in my opinion, should be a little bit wider. I've said that 3 times now, so I'm done saying it. That being said, that is good enough for me to go ahead and give this a 7 out of 10 for Fidget Factor. Next up, we have the lock, and you'll notice that this, as I said before, is a button lock system. If you're unfamiliar with button locks, also known as plunge locks, there is a spring behind that plunge right there, and when you press the button, it provides tension. That plunge is what stops the blade and keeps it in place, and when you are maneuvering it, same thing, it'll lock into place like that. So how good does the lock work? Well, there's no blade play. You know, it doesn't jiggle from side to side, and it definitely lends to some confidence. Now, one of the problems that I've had with button locks in the past is that you fidget with them for, you know, a week, 2 weeks, and they develop button stick even if they didn't come with it. And in this case, I've been carrying this, been playing with it, I've been fidgeting with it every single day, and I have not run into any button stick. You know, you can tell because if you go to disengage it, you'll hear it click. In this one, there is none of that, and I have not oiled this knife yet. If I had, you'd be seeing more, you know, you'd be seeing some oil on the micarta handle scales. It's kind of hard to hide. In this case, I haven't had to do that. I haven't encountered any button stick, and it's wearing in, not wearing out, as button locks have a tendency to do if they're not manufactured correctly. Speaking of manufacturing, that's going to bring me on to the fact that this is manufactured by QSP. QSP does a phenomenal job on their knives. I don't own any, but I have handled a few, and they're always a joy to play with, a joy to flip around. And as far as the locking mechanism is concerned, this one's no different. They did a great job, and that's good enough for me to go ahead and say that for under $100, this is one of the best feeling button locks that I've encountered, even more so than the Sencut Saxi, which I did a grail review on the other day. Anyways, I'm rambling. For being a button lock on a sub $100 knife, this one is impressive, and that's good enough for me to give it an 8 out of 10 for the locking mechanism. And finally, we are on to the final countdown, the final category. What is it? It's fit and finish. How well executed is this knife? Is there any rough spots? Was it sharp coming out of the factory? Did I have any issues? Did I have to loosen a pivot? Is everything lined up? Well, let's take a look. We'll start off with the easy parts. Is the blade centered? Oh yeah, the blade is definitely centered. Are there any sharp spots on this knife that aren't supposed to be sharp? Absolutely not. Everything is nicely rounded and knocked down all the way to the point where you have a crowned spine. The only thing that's sharp on this knife is the edge, and that's the way that it should be. The bearings came nice and crisp out of the factory, out of the box. And guys, this was not a review unit that was sent to me. This knife was one that I purchased on my own with my own hard-earned dollars, just like you will if you decide that you want to pick one up. So it's not like I got any special treatment. You know, the pocket clip definitely doesn't, it's not uncomfortable, it's not amazing, but it doesn't, you know, leave anything to be, you know, desired at the same time. It gets the job done. The backspacer made of G10. They even think of the lanyard people. If you want to put a lanyard on here, you can, and it's not getting in the way of anything else. So guys, ultimately the fit and finish on this is good. Now you might be wondering, well, I mean, how are we supposed to know how sharp it was from the factory? I'll tell you what, I've used this knife a couple times on some Amazon boxes and open bags of food, and I haven't sharpened it myself at all. I'll see if I can show you this blade real quick. I have not sharpened this at all. Still the factory grind on this blade. Used it a couple times, nothing too major, too hardcore, but I have used it. Here is a sticky note. Let's see, is it sharp? Yeah. No problem. No problem. Can I do some feather cuts on this? Yeah. In fact, it gets mighty fine. Check that out. You know when you see the fine shavings, you know that that edge is good. and I haven't sharpened this one at all. Imagine what's going to happen when I go ahead and strop this knife. So for those reasons, fit and finish come in at a very impressive 8 out of 10. So let's summarize, shall we? For materials, we got a 6 out of 10. Ergonomics was a 9 out of 10. Fidget Factor was a 7 out of 10. The lock was an 8 out of 10, and fit and finish was also an 8 out of 10. If we add those scores up, we get an impressive 38. Let's pop it in the, let's go ahead and pop it in the chart in our leaderboard, and you'll see that it's right there below the Spyderco smock, but right up there with the Concept Fenrir. It's going to give you a better value proposition than something like a Demco 80 20.5. I said what I said, and I'm not taking it back. It's going to be a better value than the Sencut Saxi, because even though the Saxi is almost half the price, the fit and finish is just better. The ergonomics is just better. And not to say that that's not a great knife as well, but this one is truly impressive. For what you get for 85 bucks, I can't imagine anything at that price point beating this out. There are plenty of great budget knives out there, but you can tell that David from Blade Banter, aka Orion Knives, really put a lot of thought into this. The fact that you have the best ergonomics for something like a pinch grip, for draw cuts, for utility cuts, for ultimate control, everything from the handle scales being just thick enough to feel confident in the hand and just long enough to fit a full large size glove. Things like this make a difference, and it's the small things that add up in the end. And so at the end of the day, a 38 is definitely fair in my opinion for this knife. A lot of people, based on my last video I did, said that they weren't a huge fan of the clip point. Personally, I think it looks badass. I love the extra utility. I love the fact that it's nice and pointy, and you get some decent belly on here, but it's not so aggressive that you feel like you're gonna have a hard time sharpening it. This has been a joy to carry, and this is also one of the knives that I'm going to be offering in my giveaway, my 500 subscriber giveaway. We've been plugging away, guys, and we're still about 76 subscribers away, if I'm not mistaken. At the time of filming this, I'm at 424 subscribers, so we're getting closer. And once we hit 500 subscribers, we're going to do a giveaway. In that giveaway, you're going to have your option of either the Orion Knives Scorpio, the Finch Buffalo Tooth, or the Finch Model 1929. So the winner will get to choose. If you're interested in free knives and you like this type of content, make sure you smash that subscribe button. If you didn't like it, there's an option for you as well, but I don't quite honestly know why you'd have watched this far anyways. And guys, that's all I got for you. Other than that, I'll see you on the flip side.